Hello, it's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 20th of March. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks for joining us on this beautifully warm spring day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at the headlines. The Korean government says it's going to earmark more than $4.5 billion to help Korean companies win major development projects in the Middle East in an attempt to spark a second boom in the region. In the latest sign, Washington wants its THAAD missile defense system in South Korea. The top U.S. military officer in Korea says the Allies need a layered ballistic missile defense capability. Plus, the Islamic State group claims responsibility for the Tunisia museum attack as authorities arrest 9 for the mass shooting that left 23 dead. But we start with the Korean government's efforts to give the local economy a shot in the arm by seeking a second Middle East boom. Following up on President Park Geun-hye's trip to the region earlier this month, her administration has unveiled a multi-billion-dollar plan to ensure local firms are in the best position to secure some lucrative new business opportunities there. Hwang Ji-hye starts us off.
Korea will funnel an extra 5 trillion won, or roughly $4.5 billion in funds to support local construction companies seeking to win orders from the Middle East. The announcement was made in a national trade and investment promotion meeting chaired by President Park Geun-hye on Thursday.
We will work to ensure the president's Middle East trip early this month produces tangible results, like improving the profitability of local builders, by increasing financial support for them and helping them find new markets within the Middle East.
On the back of the new measure, the government expects Korean companies will secure at least $70 billion in fresh orders this year and $80 billion in 2017. And to further boost efforts to ignite a so-called second Middle East boom to achieve growth, the government pledged to drastically cut regulations to lure investors in the resource-rich countries to Korea. It also said that it will continue to meet rising demand for halal foods, the global market for which is expected to grow to over $1.5 trillion in 2018, taking up almost 1/5 of the global food and beverage market. The government's drive to strengthen economic ties with the Middle East comes as Asia's 4th largest economy avidly looks for new growth engines. Experts say lots of business opportunities exist in the region as countries there try to build up their own economic and social infrastructures before their energy reserves dry up in the coming decades. Massive orders won by Korean companies in the 1970s and 80s created the first Middle East boom, laying the groundwork for Korea's economic growth. Pundits said that it's now important for the government to push the plans forward in a consistent manner and come up with detailed measures to ensure they produce results. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
And President Park is also looking to boost Korea's manufacturing and public safety industries by transforming these sectors through so-called smart innovation. For more on how a relatively small investment could lay the groundwork for some major infrastructure projects in the future, here's our Chae-sun.
At Thursday's Trade and Investment meeting, President Park talked about revolutionizing the country's manufacturing sector. She said that for Korea to continue developing new growth engines overseas, it needs to come up with groundbreaking ways to bolster the competitiveness of the manufacturing industry and speed up the pace of innovation in the sector. Referring to how China and advanced economies have begun to threaten Korea's traditionally strong presence in the global auto and mobile markets, President Park said it's time for a full-fledged revolution of the smart industries. The government laid out a plan to speed up the president's so-called Manufacturing Innovation 3.0 initiative, including a $900 million project to transform 10,000 factories into smart factories by 2020. Smart factories apply state-of-the-art information and communications technology to the manufacturing process to maximize production and efficiency. The government and the private sector will spend another $900 million on research and development of 8 smart manufacturing technologies, including the Internet of Things, by 2017. Through these initiatives, the government expects Korea will record an export volume of $1 trillion in 2024 and rank fourth globally in terms of manufacturing exports. President Park then referred to growing concerns over natural disasters and cybersecurity in the Middle East, China, and the ASEAN region, adding that Korea needs to speed up efforts to dominate the global public safety market. In that regard, the government says it will invest $10 billion into fostering Korea's public safety industries and support Korean firms looking to launch related businesses in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. 최유선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, there are more clues out of the US Federal Reserve on when it will raise the key interest rate, but still no definite answer. The central bank cited weakness in key economic indicators as reasons why it would approach the matter with caution. Our Song Ji-sun reports on the market impact.
As widely expected, the U.S. Federal Reserve opened the door for a possible rate hike sometime this year, removing the word patience from its policy statement. But Fed Chair Janet Yellen stressed the need for policymakers to consider the country's still fragile economic growth prospects.
Today's modification of our guidance should not be interpreted to mean that we have decided on the timing of that increase. In other words, just because we removed the word patient from the statement doesn't mean we're going to be impatient.
The U.S. Central Bank slashed both its growth outlook and inflation forecast for this year, saying inflation would move below its 2% target, largely due to falling energy prices and a decrease in spending. Yellen also noted that exports have weakened partly due to the strong dollar, but said that also reflects the strength of the U.S. economy. This hints that the Fed will not rush into a rate hike, as that will lead to a stronger dollar and dent its outbound shipments.
Because the Fed did what was expected, and at the same time, the markets are getting the message that, you know what, the Fed's not in a hurry to raise rates, and we're probably going to have these near zero interest rates for a few months longer than we thought.
Seoul Central Bank convened an emergency meeting Thursday morning to discuss the impact of the Fed's statement and prepare countermeasures. The market consensus is that the impact on Seoul will be limited, and fluctuations in the global financial market will be more contained, as the Fed stressed a more cautious approach in light of the impact of its stronger dollar. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The United States continues to make its case for the deployment of the so-called THAAD missile defense system to the Korean peninsula. The top U.S. military general in South Korea has told defense officials in Washington that the allies need a layered ballistic missile defense capability to counter North Korea's rising military capabilities. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The commander of U.S. Forces Korea is calling on Seoul and Washington to implement a layered ballistic missile defense capability, and another strong signal that the U.S. is keen to deploy the THAAD system to the Korean peninsula. In a written testimony to the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense on Thursday, General Curtis Scaparrotti stressed the need for a ballistic missile defense capability in South Korea due to the threat posed by North Korea. On the same day, an official from the U.S. Defense Department said Washington is prepared to hold official talks with Seoul about the possible deployment of THAAD, as there have been no formal consultations thus far. The ongoing speculation about the possible deployment of THAAD to South Korea has stirred controversy inside and outside of Korea. China and Russia are deeply opposed to THAAD being on their regional doorstep, saying it would infringe upon their national security. On the other hand, its supporters say THAAD will counter North Korea's increasing ballistic and missile threats. The U.S. also believes the threat posed by North Korea has become even more acute. Scaparrotti told the committee that Pyongyang has the ability to produce a miniaturized nuclear warhead that can be mounted on top of a ballistic missile. North Korea has conducted 3 nuclear bomb tests, the first in 2006, the second in 2009, and most recent coming in February 2013. Experts predict a potential fourth testing will be to test the miniaturized warhead. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
South Korea is looking for a way to reach a compromise with North Korea on the wage dispute at the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex. A Unification Ministry official said Thursday that North Korea's unilateral decision last month to hike wages by more than 5% is not totally unacceptable, and that Seoul is seeking talks through the Management Committee for the jointly led complex. Previously, Seoul said it was firmly against a pay raise and offered government-level discussions on the issue, which Pyongyang rejected. Now, we're going to a different story. A growing number of Korea's urban dwellers are leaving the city behind them and returning to the farm. According to the Agriculture Ministry, 44,000 households relocated to rural areas last year, jumping nearly 40% from the previous year. Now, one of the reasons cited for the record high figure was poor job security for young people. The trend first made a big surge in 2010, and the government expects it will continue in the future, following projections of increased life expectancy for Korea's expanding senior population. Now, back to that other story. March is Women's History Month in the United States, and to mark the occasion here in Korea, the U.S. Embassy has invited female leaders from around the world to network, share their insights, and celebrate women and their many achievements. Now, Kim Min-ji sat down with Claudia Chan, a leadership expert and guest speaker.
Women worldwide are making strides to break down walls and create social equality, change, and a more positive environment for women. Claudia Chan, the CEO of She Global Media, a media and education company, is one of them. She's in Seoul to share her insights and empower young women so they too can make change.
Well, there's absolutely a women's revolution happening right now across the world, I believe. I've seen an unprecedented amount of organizations and activists and businesses who have been speaking up for women's rights. Being a woman is incredible, and also it brings a diversity to society. I think feminine traits are incredible qualities of collaboration and communication and empathy and vulnerability that the world needs right now.
So what improvements are needed, to foster an environment, to foster more female leaders?
It can't just be women fighting for women. We need to have the private sector. They need to create programs to get more women into higher level positions. Media is a huge vehicle as well, because you have a microphone that speaks to so many women, and to share stories like this, just to create consciousness. Media creates consciousness, and consciousness is what leads to change.
So a recent report by the World Economic Forum showed that Korea ranks 117th out of 142 countries when it comes to gender inequality. So what are some of the things that Korea needs to do in order to reduce this discrepancy and foster more women leaders?
We need more initiatives to help young women coming out of college get jobs, because it's very, very difficult, more difficult for a young woman to get a job than it is for a man. That's one, so institutionalizing career programs, sponsorship programs, internship programs at universities, at corporations. That seems like a very important initiative. Number two is, women are not having children. There's a huge fertility issue here in Korea, and of course, then that's not good for society, and it's not good for women. So there needs to be a lot of programs and initiatives around that as well.
Do you have any advice for aspiring young women?
The number one glass ceiling to break before any of it is really the one in your mind. Having that confidence, inner confidence, is really important, and changing the voice in your mind instead of being critical, constantly critical of yourself. We need to be more loving and kind to ourselves, so that our voice is giving us the confidence to go out there to do whatever it is that we want to do, to dream big and to defy the odds.
Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the suspicions appear to be confirmed. The Islamic State group says it was behind the massacre at Tunisia's National Museum that saw the deaths of more than 20 people, most of them just foreign tourists looking for an enjoyable day out at the museum. For more, we connect to Eunice Kim at the NewsCenter. So, Eunice, the casualties were from several countries around the world, including Britain, Japan, Poland, Australia, and of course Tunisia itself.
That's right, Mark. Many countries mourning the passing of their citizens and loved ones. The latest toll has 20 foreign national fatalities from Wednesday's deadly attack. That's up from 17 we reported yesterday, plus 3 Tunisians and the 2 slain gunmen. A mood of solemn solidarity at a tribute and anti-terror demonstration in central Turin Thursday evening as the Islamic State group claimed online it was responsible for the Bardo Museum slaughter. In an audio recording dispersed on Twitter, it praised the 2 gunmen as knights of the Islamic State and threatened more strikes. But some security analysts in the region warn that the group could be taking credit where credit is not due. Now, in the ongoing investigations, Tunisia's presidential office said police have made 9 arrests, 4 suspects said to be directly linked to the gunmen, and the remaining 5 alleged to be part of a terrorist cell. Relatedly, the United Nations Human Rights Office is urging the UN Security Council to prosecute the Islamic State group for its crimes against humanity, war crimes, and also possible genocide charges at the International Criminal Court.
And Eunice, another big story this morning is where the White House is heading now in its strained relations with Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu. We understand President Barack Obama has finally made that phone call to the Prime Minister-elect. What did the 2 leaders have to say to each other?
Well, President Obama did finally extend that belated congratulations 2 days after Prime Minister Netanyahu has apparently been re-elected to a 4th term, and also affirmed their 2 countries' close partnerships. But he also raised the controversial comments that Netanyahu had made in those final hours of his campaigning that a Palestinian state would not exist under his watch. Obama said the White House would have to reassess the Israeli-Palestinian peace approach, apparently in tone with those comments made earlier by White House spokesman Josh Earnest, who said it would reevaluate its historical support of Israel at the United Nations. Some strong words there. Following his election victory, the Israeli leader also appeared to backtrack from his earlier stance, telling a U.S. broadcaster that he wanted a 2-state solution still, but that the circumstances needed to change for the security of Israel.
Well, thank you very much, Eunice, for those reports. And as always, we'll see you back at noon.
We'll see you then.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games as the IOC concluded their 4 days of the IOC Coordination Commission, with the chair of IOC's Coordination Committee, Gunilla Lindberg, holding a presser at the end of the day. And despite some bumps on the road, Gunilla Lindberg sounded optimistic over the current status of the Pyeongchang Winter Games, saying that she's convinced the event will be ready in time, but that there's no time to lose. She added that there's been big progress made since their last visit in January and that they should be ready to do the test launch set to take place in February of 2016. Now, recently, the 2022 Qatar World Cup is being called one of the most controversial World Cups to date, with the question of whether or not the tournament can take place in the summer months. And now, after a long debate, the date set for the major football tournament. Now, after a long discussion on moving the 2022 World Cup to winter time, what was once just rumors turned into reality as FIFA announced earlier today that the World Cup final will take place on December 18th, meaning the tournament will take place during winter time for the first time ever. Now, despite the UEFA requesting the date to be on December 23rd, FIFA had to cater to England's Boxing Day matches on December 26th. Meanwhile, despite Korea being the favorite to host the 2019 Women's World Cup, they lost their bid to France. And with the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus taking Game 1 from the Changwon LG Sakers on Wednesday night, the Wonju Donggu Promi and the Incheon Itilan Elephants went into their Game 1 of the round of 4 best-of-5 series on Thursday night. Despite Dongbu being the higher seed here, ET Land using their momentum from their first round victory to control the pace from the start as they take a nice 36-30 lead going to halftime. But the Dongbu offense lights it up in the third quarter to rally back and take a 53-47 lead going into the fourth quarter. But what do you know, in the final quarter, Dongbu may be too rested for the series as ET Land rallies to take the lead back with Ricardo Powell posting up 21 points and 10 rebounds as ET Land takes game one 66-62. And while the KBL playoff games are in full throttle, the V-League will kick off their postseason this weekend with some big matchups right from the get-go. Now, first off, over on the Women's League, best-of-3 series set for Hyundai Hill State and IBK Altos, who will face off before advancing to the championship series, as Korea Expressway, who are seeking their first title, will wait for the winner of that series. Meanwhile, over on the Men's League, KEPCO Vic Storm and OK Savings Bank squaring off in the first round before the winner of that series will face off against the 8-time champions Samsung Hwajae Blue Fangs, as the Blue Fangs seek their 8th consecutive championship title. Well, that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, today will be as warm as yesterday. High in many parts will hike to near 20 degrees, feeling more like late April this afternoon, but beware of wide temperature gaps between lows and highs and dress accordingly. Well, we still have a good amount of clouds hovering over the peninsula, but things will get brightened up as the day goes on, and mostly to partly sunny skies will be featured throughout the day today. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So while the daytime high here in Seoul will peak to 20, Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 21 and 18 later on. And as for the other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 16 and 20, and Dokdo will top out at 12. Now we'll have one more day of relatively warm readings. Then the temperatures will go back to the norms on Sunday, and the lows will briefly drop to the freezing side early next week. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, I think that's quite enough chocolate for this time on a Friday morning. That's pretty much all we have for you for now, news-wise. But as always, we must stress that there are plenty more stories online, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone app for all the latest news. But as well as the news, all our programmes are there as well, which you can watch at your convenience wherever you are. We'll be back at noon Korea time with Newsline at noon. I'll be with Ojin Ju. That will be our next newscast in about 90 minutes' time. So until then, goodbye.